I am so happy to welcome Angie Mudd to the Tech and Tell. This is her very first time on the Tech and Tell webinar. Angie is an adult education coordinator, actually the PD coordinator, ESL instructor, and instructional coach for Community Action Incorporated of Central Texas. She has worked with Community Action since 2004. She teaches ESL, ABE, and citizenship classes, as well as provides instructional coaching for adult education instructors in her organization. Angie received a bachelor's in speech communication and a master's degree in communication studies from Texas State University. So she got her master's in communication from Texas State, then known as Southwest Texas. Angie taught at TCC, TLU, and Texas State before finding her passion in community education. She has been a trailblazer, a state trainer for content standards from the very beginning. Since 2016, she has been a trainer for every rendition that we have had, and she is a certified Standards 3.0 trainer. So at this time, please give Angie a warm welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Anne-Marie. That was great. I'm excited to be here. It's hard to believe it's my first Tech and Tell, but of course I'm excited and would love to do it again sometime, assuming today goes well. I thank you, Anne-Marie, for having me on, and Paula for helping today. I love the standards, and I'm excited about the Civics standards. I think they're right on time, and I'm really excited about the teaching skills that matter. I was excited when Anne-Marie got the clearing for me to do this Tech and Tell, because I think it's a great resource for all of us to use in incorporating these new standards. So let's get started. It'll be a fast hour. We have lots to go over. Today, we're talking about the Teaching Skills That Matter, TSTM, toolkit and website, and how they relate to the Civics standards and how they're going to help us implement these standards into our classroom. We have 3 training objectives. We're going to identify how the Teaching Skills That Matter toolkit correlates directly to the new civic content standards. They're very closely related and makes it super easy to integrate these into the class. We're going to look at the website and the resources that they have available. And we're going to discuss how teachers can use these, the civic education lesson plans to integrate the civic content standards. So the layout for this training, I'm going to explain what the TSTM toolkit is, a little bit about how the website is laid out, and break down the different parts of the website. Then we will go look at the website so you can see. So first I explain it in the PowerPoint, and then we'll go look at it. And then, of course, I'll give you time at the end to go explore for yourself, and hopefully we'll have time for you to go look at a lesson plan and kind of break it down on your own. So first of all, what is the Teaching Skills That Matter? So this was an adult education project that trains teachers in to integrate 9 different skills through 3 different approaches that work across 5 different topics. So we're going to look at the 953 here shortly. There are a few trainers in different states that have been trained in the Teaching Skills That Matter. So it's a really big federal initiative that they've done. It's located on the LINKS website under State Resources and Federal Initiatives. So we'll look at how to get there. And then it has already made lesson plans that you can use in your classroom that align directly to the civic content standards. So you'll see there are 5 topics. Civics education is one of the 5 topics. And then those 9 skills in 3 different teaching approaches are used in these lesson plans. Let's look at the layout. So 953, that's how they kind of organize and break down what they're teaching and how they're teaching it in this toolkit. So first of all, they identify 9 skills that they believe are important for adult education students to be successful in the classroom and also to be successful in their job. If you've seen the employability skills framework, these are very closely related to that framework and the skills that they identify there. They also relate to the detailed work activities from OTAN in our Texas content standards. So this is really what's great about these lesson plans. The fact that they are using these skills shows that they are related directly to our standards. The 5 topics that they have here so what they do is they take these skills and they teach these skills in the lesson plans. These are the 5 topics that they've put lesson plans under. You have civics education, digital literacy, financial health, and workforce preparation. So obviously today we're going to talk about the civics education, but all 5 of these are important. All of the lesson plans are really great and can be used in the classroom. And all of these topics teach these skills in their lessons. And then the 3 relates to 3 different teaching approaches that we use in adult education. So you have integrated and contextualized learning. So that's right, when we take the basics, math, reading, language, and we integrate them into a specific contextualized area, which are like the 5 we've identified here. They have problem-based learning, where the students identify a problem, or the teacher identifies a problem, and then the students work to solve that problem. And then you have project-based learning, where the students come together in groups and teams often, and they create a project, and they utilize, of course, all of these 9 skills. And then at the end, they usually present their project and what they've done. So of course, if you're an experienced teacher, these are all great approaches that we use in our classroom regularly. Let's look at the teaching skills that matter toolkit. Okay, this is how the toolkit, when we go to the website, you'll see that this is how the toolkit is laid out. There's an overview, there's the 5 topics that we talked about, and then there's an other tools and resources. So the next slide, I'm going to break down the overview. And of course, the main part of this presentation is going to be about the civic education. Hopefully on your own, you can look at the other 4 content areas. And then the other tools and resources, that provides templates. There are a lot of templates you can use for implementing this toolkit. So some of the lesson plans, it has like a blank lesson plan. It also has some templates that you can use if you were observing teachers. So for those of you that are instructional coaches, if you wanted your teachers to be using this teaching skills that matter, you could use some of their observation tools. And then if you wanted to go back and teach your staff about using this toolkit, it has resources there for training also. And then it has some other resources for the different areas and different approaches. So the overview, the first tab that's on the toolkit, has an introduction to the toolkit. So it talks about the project and why they created this project, and how they identified the 953, the 9 skills, the 5 topics, the 3 approaches. There is an article that defines these skills, and it gives an example of each of them and how we use them in adult education and why they're important. It also defines the 5 topics and goes into a little more depth of why they pick these 5 and how they benefit adult education students. And then it defines the 3 approaches, which I think is really great, especially for new teachers that aren't as familiar with these 3 approaches. It does give an article and an explanation of how to use those 3 approaches and why they're beneficial. And then the last thing that's in the overview is the video. So there are 3 videos of teachers actually using these 3 approaches. So you see them incorporating a project-based lesson, a problem-based lesson, and an integrated and contextualized instruction. I think this is really great for new teachers, new to adult ed, because sometimes we forget that these approaches might not be the same as in K through 12 when you're using them with adult education students. So it's really, I think these videos are great. And also it's great for all of us that have been in adult education to go back and see how teachers use these in their classroom. This is the tab for the overview of the toolkit. The next 5 tabs are the 5 topics that we talked about. So each tab has an issue brief. It has a case study of a teacher actually using a lesson, and those are both articles. It has 5 lesson plans. So each tab has 5 lesson plans, and then 3 of them have a video of teachers using it. And this is on top of the videos that's in the overview. So we're going to go and look at civics, but this gives you a little idea of what each topic looks like. So we'll look at the lesson plans in the civic education. But again, I really like the videos. I think they're great for seeing this actually in action. So this is the homepage of Links. Links is a great resource. You do not have to have an account to get their resources here for adult education. So if you haven't ever visited here, you're really going to want to check out all of their resources. Here under state resources, you click on federal initiatives and you scroll down and we'll see the teaching skills that matter. So you see as we scroll down, the first you have 953 that we discussed. And as you scroll down more, you see here the layout that I discussed and how I showed you in the PowerPoint. When we click on the overview, you'll see here, this is where you see the defining the topics, defining the approaches, an overview, and then the 3 videos that we discussed of how they incorporate these 3 approaches into an adult education classroom. So this here is the overview, and it will give you an introduction and kind of explain the layout of the lesson plan. So let's look a little bit more at the civics part of the teaching skills that matter. So that is the first tab. And I really want to look at how this is related to the civic standards. So first, I want to review the civic content standards. These are the new civic content standards. Most of you said you're familiar with them. You see at the top, we have the 4 sub areas. And underneath each sub area, we have 4 or 5 standards listed. I love these standards because to me, they're more than just learning about government, right? We're teaching our students to become participants and educated participants in the community and in society. And we really need that, especially like immigrants. I know that's a really hard transition, and they bring so much valuable knowledge and skill into our community. So I just love these standards, and I think a lot of adult educators are already doing this, but I love that as a state, we're encouraging this, and they're just really timely. I want to look at these, since you're familiar, I want to ask a question and see, what similarities do you see between the 9 skills that I listed at the beginning that the TSTM identified and the civic content standards. So I'm going to list both on the screen, but this is what I want you to do. I want you to look at the 9 skills, and I'm going to show you the standards for each sub area. And in the chat, I want you to type which number of the skills do you think relates to that sub area and those standards in that sub area. So I'll explain that again if you're like, what did she just say? All right, so these are the 9 skills. Remember, adaptability, willingness to learn, communication, critical thinking, interpersonal skills, navigating systems, problem solving, processing and analyzing info, respecting differences and diversity, and self-awareness. I already see, I just really know that these relate. So here's the first sub area that we have, right? Become and stay informed. Here's some of the standards. Here's the 5 standards listed under there. So what I want you to do is in the chat, I want you to type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. And of course, there's going to be multiple, right? That you think relates to the standards in this sub area. For me, I'm looking at C. Yeah, 3, exactly. Critical thinking. For me, I'm looking at C, figure out how a system that affects a system. Right? Which one over here in the skills is talking about system? Yeah, 5, exactly. I see 5 relates to C. Let's see. How about E is find, interpret, analyze, and use diverse sources of information? Which one? Oh, yeah, exactly. 7. Yeah, I see processing and analyzing information. Yep, someone said problem solving. Yeah, E is related to 7. So yeah, let's see. Here's what I chose. I put 1, willingness to learn. That's kind of about A and B, I think. 3, critical thinking. Everyone said 3. I said 5, systems for C, 7 for E. And then I put self-awareness because this talks about strengths and resources for yourself and others, responsibility and civic rights for yourself and others. So that's kind of an awareness, right, of yourself. So yeah, awesome. Let's do it again for the second area. So here we have this, and of course, let me tell you, there's no right or wrong, right? This is kind of my opinion, which ones I picked, but you could probably argue a lot that all 9 skills fit in each sub area. So, okay, so here's the second sub area. What do we see in this sub area? Learning from others' experience, expressing a sense of self, communicating, reflecting. What do we see? Yeah, 9, 8, 4, 9. I agree. Yeah. I mean, 2 for sure, right? See, we say communicate so that others can understand. Yeah. 4, interpersonal skills. Good. Learn from others. Yeah, that's interpersonal. 3, critical thinking. I agree. Reflecting on beliefs. That's critical thinking. Yeah. Processing and analyzing information. I mean, that's about evaluating your opinion. Yeah, great. And the more I went through the sub areas, the more standard skills I felt like I listed too. So yeah, I put 2, communication for C. I put critical thinking. I saw some of you put that. Interpersonal skills, some of you said that. I agree. 8, I put respecting differences and diversity because we talk about here, strengthen and express a sense of self. And then at the bottom, it says reflect and reevaluate your own opinions and ideas. So I think that that's, or I'm sorry, B, learning from others' experience and ideas is respecting differences and diversity, right? So I saw somebody put 8, I think that. So, and self-awareness, right? Learning about our history and values and beliefs is very much about self-awareness. Good. All right, what about 3? We have working together, right? This sub area is teaching our students how to work together in a team and then, get involved in their community, manage conflict, participate in group process. We know how important all of this is for our community, but also for their work. So what do we think? Which ones do we think relate? Yeah. Communication, interpersonal skills. Yeah, problem solving. 6 was for sure for me, right? Because D, manage and resolve conflict. 8, respecting differences. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, B, right, is respect others and work to eliminate discrimination and prejudice. I mean, that directly relates to skill number 8. So you can see how well these skills relate and correlate to the civic content standards. Quickly, the last, or here's what I put, 1, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, basically all of them, right? What did I leave out? 2 and 3, but yeah, I'm sure it's about communicating when you're working together and critical thinking. Yeah, those relate also. Last one, take action to strengthen communities. Right. So this is about influencing leadership and decision-making, educating others, helping yourself and others. What do we think? 6, yeah, problem solving for sure when you're communicating with decision makers. All right, 2, 4, 8, and 6. Yeah, I agree. 7, processing. Yeah, look what I did here on number 4. This is kind of cheating. Look, I put 1 through 9. So, I mean, when I read this one, I just saw all of them relate, right? I mean, help yourself and others. That's communicating, critical thinking, interpersonal skills. When you're educating others, you've got to be willing to learn. You've got to have interpersonal skills. You have to respect differences when you're educating others. When you're trying to provide leadership, you want to be self-aware. You need to know how systems work. So for me, you can see all of these skills are directly related to the civic content standards. And that's to me why this website is so awesome. So taking a deeper look at how the TSTM defines citizenship, this is great to me. It says personal, they're personally responsible, they're justice oriented, and they're participatory. I mean, this is exactly what we're saying in wanting to teach in the civic content standards. We're wanting them to participate. We're wanting them to take responsibility for their own beliefs and what they think. And we're wanting them to be justice oriented, to respect others, to participate, to influence people. So I thought that this just really showed and defined what we also believe in when we use the civic content standards. So when we go to the website, you're going to see when we click on the tab, this is how each topic area is laid out. Okay, and like I mentioned, you have the issue brief and a case study. Then you have 5 lesson plans. Okay, the first lesson plan that we have and we're going to look at is the First Amendment lesson plan. And you'll see here there's 2 readings from News ELA. I don't know if you say News ELA or News ELA, but you have 2 readings that go with that lesson plan. The second lesson plan is the Flint water crisis lesson plan, you'll see. The third is social change through community involvement, which was just about working in your community and being active in your community, sub-area 4. The fourth one here is raising public awareness through adult education. This was their problem-based learning. And then the last one was sharing your expertise with local skills. So this was a project-based learning. So these are the 5 lessons on the civics education tab. And you see there's additional resources, and then there's the video that I discussed where it shows a teacher actually using one of these lesson plans in the classroom, YouTube video. So these civic lessons, I really like because there's a lot of variety. We have a reading lesson, which was the First Amendment right lesson plan that we're going to look at. There's a research lesson, which was the Flint water crisis. It has the students go out and research what lead is and how dangerous it is. There's a video lesson. The social involvement has a business owner that discusses giving in his community. And then there's a writing activity and project, what are the last 2. So raising the public awareness and then sharing your expertise gives you writing and activity and project. So the reason I put this on there is because I really like that it has variety. If you use this tab, you'll have lots of different types of lessons you can teach your students. This is what the actual one of the lesson plans looks like. So we go to the website, you'll see when we click on the First Amendment rights lesson plan, the very first one, you see at the top here, it lists the level that they recommend that you teach this at. Of course, this can be adapted. Most of these are in the civics are for ESL classrooms, but my HSE students have used them. They're very easily adaptable to be used in an ESL classroom as well. Here you have the instructional objectives. So this is what the lesson plan is going to teach in the class. And then over here, you have the length of the lesson. Now, of course, if you're using it in a higher level class, it might not take you as long. Or if you're using, like, for example, this in an HSC classroom, this one's really great in an HSC social studies lesson. It might not take a full 2 hours, but you might supplement and end up. But that's just something to keep in mind if you do change the NRS level of the class that you're teaching. This is the second page of the lesson plan. You see here, the college and career standards are here. And of course, these are very similar to our Texas standards. Hopefully, eventually we have these aligned to the Texas standards. But as we just went through, it's very easy to align. Because just like we did in that activity, if you look here, this is where the 9 skills are listed. And you can see it has number 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, and 9 checked. So you could do the same thing that I just did in that activity. You could look at the civic content standards and then align these skills to which standards it's teaching. And that would, for your lesson plan, you could then put in the appropriate civic content standards that it aligns to. That's what we do. All right. And then at the bottom there, you see that's the language focus. So using it in an ESL classroom, it shows you there what type of language skills you would be teaching if you use this lesson. Let's look at this First Amendment lesson plan. You can see the level, the objectives, the learning targets, the time, the second page I showed with the skills, and the career and college readiness standards. I want to go down and actually get into the lesson plan a little bit. So you see here, it talks about the different types of lesson that it has, and then it has a little breakdown for if you have lower level students. So there is some scaffolding here, and that's really great because probably most of us teach, right, multi-level classes. We know how that is. So for me, this is really great in that it's all laid out and already done for you. So you see, here's your introduction question or activity. So you're going to read this. You're going to create a mind map. Now, most of these are created for an in-person. I believe they were written before we all went online. But there is a couple of the videos that shows an online teacher using this. So I think it's very easily adaptable, and it works both online and in person. So, you get them talking about freedoms in the United States. Here's the skills that this is teaching. It has an appendix here. So there are activities down at the end that you'll look at that are like a handout that you can do. Has another question. It gives some examples of language and what we're teaching with the First Amendment, what the First Amendment says. It gives a discussion here, explanation and modeling for what's the concept, talking about protest and inviting students to share stories. So this is really where the discussion is taking place. You see it has a small group activity here. Here's where it goes into the reading and the guiding reading. I'll show you in just a second the two articles. You can see here there's a Montgomery bus boycott article from Newsella. It gives you the level, and then you can always go to Newsella and change. If you're not familiar with that website, it's really great because you can use the same article at a higher level and a lower level. Now, it usually has about 4 options that you can change. So that's really great if you're teaching a multi-level class. So it gives 2 different articles. It does some pre-reading, then you have a reading, and then you have some discussion questions. Both articles have 4 questions afterwards already laid out for you. So like I said, you can really take this lesson plan and implement it immediately into your classroom. After you do the reading, then it has them switch groups and then talk about what they read and compare. There's a checklist that students can use as they go through and read. And then it has a whole class discussion when you come back. And then it has an extension activity for homework that gets them to go out and find examples of people using their First Amendment. And then there's an exit ticket, of course, which is great. I mean, to see if they, what they learned and if they got it. And so if I scroll, these are the handouts that they had. So in the right column, it showed you can use Appendix A. This was the matching where it gives you the original language from the Constitution, and then it explains what that language actually means. And so it's like a matching activity that they do before the reading to get themselves thinking about that. And then the second one was the matching activity for the protest. So it gives some pictures, which you can discuss. You can match, the message that goes with it. And so I just really love this activity. I think it's thought-provoking. It's directly related to the standards of getting them to analyze their own beliefs and thoughts, and then also, think about what's going on in our society and why and what's happening, and getting us to talk about some of the movements and protests just in an educational way, so. And then the last one here was a vocabulary handout. So it gives some words from the readings and then has them describe it or use them in a sentence or look at them and use that vocabulary. So this would be great too. You can always use this as the next class follow-up where you do a dictation or you do some sentence stems where you have them matching and filling in the blank. So this is one whole lesson. Any questions? I know this is a lot of material I just went through. I just wanted to at least show you one whole lesson plan. So these here were the two readings that the lesson plan discussed. So reading A was the Montgomery bus boycott, and then reading B was Martin Luther King Jr. use of nonviolence. And when you click on these, you can see the reading. It gives you the Lexile level here in the word count, and then it gives you the questions on page 3 afterwards. So just really great lesson already laid out for you. So before we go into our activity, here's a couple, I'm going to give you some time to check it out, but I just wanted to give a couple of examples of how we at Community Action have used these lesson plans. So we have used them in our HSE classroom. The one I just showed you, the First Amendment, I had a teacher use that to compare civil rights movement to the Black Lives Matter movement. They did a compare and contrast and discussed the First Amendment. It was a social studies lesson that she did. We have an entrepreneurial class. We used one of the videos in the social change. That was like the 3rd or 4th lesson plan. It's a young man, or it's a man who owns a Dairy Queen or a small business, and he ends up doing a charity and raising money for his community. And so we used that in our entrepreneurial class. We had an ESL class that discussed volunteering, and they used the social change. They talk about, that's what that lesson plan is about volunteering and helping out at your kids' schools and different opportunities. And then the way I use them as a coordinator is these are pre-made lessons. When I have a teacher call in last minute, I use these for a substitute. They're already put together. They can just basically walk through them and use them. The handouts are right there. So if the teacher didn't have time to plan, which happens, especially in the winter when children start getting sick, and we use it that way also, I think that they're really valuable for that. Lesson plan I just showed you is, for me, it would be more like 2 days, or, because it is a very deep concept. There's so much around it. So I agree 100%. And of course, your class also. So really what they're capable of doing. But absolutely, I think spreading them out and using them as a unit, using them over a week, a couple of classes, I think that is a great idea. And that's a good point to make to your teachers. You don't need to cram this in. For me, more time is always better, I think. Thank you for your time.